Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So for today's lesson, we're going to continue our lesson on normal distribution. So for the first part of normal distribution, we have learned on how to find probability of a z value. So please briefly go through that notes before you go and do this part. So for the second part is the other way around. So we are given a probability and instead we want to find the z value now. Okay, so there are a lot of ways on how to do this, so I want you to stick and try to follow my notes to avoid confusions. Okay, after you have mastered everything inside it, then you can modify and do some shortcuts if you want. Alright, so briefly recall that pz less than small z, we can rewrite this as phi z, and we can only use the z table if z is less than small z, right, from first part. Okay, so let's try the first example here, 2.11. So find the value of z, pz less than small z equals to 0.9693. 0.9693 is the probability here, and the z here is what we want to find. So there are two ways where we can have the probability of 0.9693. So look at these two diagrams. Okay, so both exceeds 0.5 because each half contains a probability of 0.5, right? So 0.9693 should exceed this mean. Okay, but there are only one diagram which is correct. So if you look at the sign here, which is less than small z, so which one is it? Which one is the correct one? So this is the correct one, the left diagram. So we reject the right diagram. Okay, so if you look at your z value here, it's on the right side of your mean, so you should be expecting a positive numerical value for your z. Remember that. Okay, and recall that this area is your probability. Alright, so I want you to write your notation properly. So pz less than small z equals to 0.9693. So this one we can rewrite it as phi z. So phi z is equal to 0.9693, still notation for probability. So if you want to find your z, so we can rewrite the notation as inverse phi. Okay, 0.9693. We're still dealing with probability here. So how do you find your z value then? So you look at your z table, so you search for 0.9693. Instead of searching at the z part here, now we look at the main area here. Search for 0.9693, which is the probability here, and then find the corresponding z value, which is 1.87. So that's it. So I'm going to skip explaining the second example to save time and to save data. So you can read all the writings here, all the workings here. It's pretty straightforward and pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to skip explaining the third example also, but you should be redoing it. Okay, now let's discuss the fourth example. Okay, so now here we have probability z greater than small z equals to 0.812. So if you look at the probability here, it's 0.812. It's greater than 0.5, so it should be exceeding the mean. It can do that in two ways, in two cases, the left one and the right one, but only one is correct diagram. So which one is it? So you look at your sign, so this is less than, so this is greater than, so this is the one. Okay, so the left one we reject, so we accept the right one. If you look at the diagram here, remember that this area is the probability 0.812, and this is the z value that we want to find. So look at your z value, it is on the left side of your mean, so you should be expecting a negative numerical value for your z. Okay, so z is just a symbol here, that's why we write z here, but your answer later should be negative. Okay, so if you want to use the z table to find your z value, you cannot use this diagram. You have to flip it, because in order for you to use your z table, you should have this kind of diagram, right? It should be z less than something. Okay, so if you flip the diagram right here, your Z symbol should be negative Z. So that is very, very important. Don't worry about the value here. So you should know that you should be expecting a negative value, right? So if you have negative here and then negative Z, double negative will give you positive. Alright, so Z is just a symbol. So anyway, so we flip it like this, your Z becomes negative Z. So now we can use the Z table. So this area probability is, the notation is something like this: probability of Z less than small minus Z, okay, equals to 0.812, which is the probability here. Okay, so since this is Z less than something, you can rewrite it as phi minus Z, phi something, phi minus Z, equals to 0.812. So 0.812 is still the probability. So we want to find the value of minus Z. So the notation here will become inverse phi. So if you look at your probability from your Z table, you will not find 0.812 exactly. So search for the value which is nearest to it, which is 0.8106, and then supplement it with 0.014. So that will give you Z value of 0.88 and 5, which is 0.885. So therefore, move the negative sign, so your Z will become minus 0.885. Okay, so as we mentioned before, your Z should be negative, right? Makes sense. If you put your Z here, the double negative Z will make it positive, so it makes sense. So let's try the last example for part 2.1. okay, so this is very similar to the fourth example, so but the probability here is 0.198, so it should not exceed 0.5, should not exceed the mean. So two possible way that this can happen, on the left diagram or on the right diagram. Understand? Okay, so but which one is the correct one? So look at the sign greater than Z. So this is less than Z, we reject that. This is greater than Z, so this is the one that we want. So if you look at your Z, here is on the right side of your mean. You should be expecting a positive numerical value. You don't need to flip it. So now let's work on this and find the Z value. So the notation for this one is Z greater than small z, which can be rewritten as 1 the whole probability minus Z less than small z. Okay, so algebra, you'll get, move 1 to the other side, you'll get pz less than z equals to 0.802. So since this is z less than something, you can write as phi something. If you want to find, so 0.802 is still probability. If you want to find z, phi become inverse phi. So you will not be able to find 0.82, 0.802 exactly. So find the nearest to it, and that's your z value. Done. Alright, so the second part of today's lesson is we want to use the standard normal table in reverse for any normal variable x. So for the first part, we already standardized it for you. For the second part, we start from x, and then we have to do some kind of standardizing to find the value of x. Alright, so to find the x value for x is normally distributed. Given its probability, you have to follow these 4 simple steps. The first one, if you have to simplify the notation into the form of p x less than small x. So you can also draw a diagram as how I taught you to help you. And after that, you standardize them, and then step 3, you find the z value, and then the final step is you find your x value. It's very, very similar to the first part. You just need to do some kind of standardization. So we have lots of examples that you can follow for the second part, but I will only do the first one for you. Okay, so example 2.21. The random variable x has a normal distribution with mean 120 and standard deviation of 25. So we have this one. Okay, so find px greater than m equals to 0.025. So m is your x value, not z. so you're gonna have to do some kind of standardizing here. But before that, step 1, you need to simplify it into px less than x, small x. So 0.025 is the probability. It's very small, should not exceed 0.5. So you should have two possible ways of having this kind of probability, left or right here, as I have drawn for you. But which one is the correct one? So you look at your sign here. So it should be greater than m. So the right one is the correct one. So you reject the left one. So if you look at your m here, it's on the right side of your mean. So you should be expecting a value greater than 120. Alright. So if you look at here, the blue area is your small probability. Okay. So step 1, simplifying px less into px less than small x. So we started from px greater than m equals to 0.025, okay, which is this diagram. So in order for you to, this one is also can be rewritten as 1 minus px1, the whole thing, minus this big area, which is x less than small m. So you write it, you're gonna have this. Move on to the other side, you're gonna have this done. Okay, so now we can use the z table later. So step 2, apply standardization. So your big X will become your big Z. Your M will become your small z, where small z is m minus 120 over 25. You can also rewrite as m minus 120 over 25 here, but it can be a bit tedious if you want to rewrite this. So I'm just going to use the symbol z here. So step 3, find the z value, exactly the same as first part. So since this is pz less than z, you can rewrite it as phi small z. So this is the probability. To find z, you write the notation of inverse phi and 0.975, which is still the notation for probability. And then you go to your z table, you find the probability of 0.975, then you'll get the z value of 1.960. So that is your z value, but we are not done yet because we want to find the x value. So since z is equals to x minus 120 over 25 due to standardization, use algebra, then you can find your m. Done. So for this part, you can read everything here and follow it. This is pretty straightforward, and I want you to redo it. Okay. Also for part C, everything is here for you to read and for you to understand. Okay, please redo this. Okay, so for the last part of today's lesson is we want to find mu and lambda instead, the standard deviation and the mean. So again, this is almost the same as the first and the second part of today's lesson. It's just instead of x, we're going to find mu and lambda. Alright, so everything here is self-explanatory. You can try and read it. So if you have any kind of problem, please contact me. Alright, so again, everything is in detail here. You can try and understand it and redo it. So if you have any question one more time, please contact me and I will try my best to help you out. So sorry for the brief explanation of today's lesson. I'm trying to make a video out of it, so I need to save time to avoid making a large size video so that I can share it through WhatsApp. Any problem, just WhatsApp me. Okay, so see you guys.